Well, it's time for us to start, so thank you everyone for being in attendance today, and I appreciate it. I'd like to call the meeting to order. I would like to introduce our commission members as well as our new alternate member that we have with us today. On the end, on my far right, is Bob Hinkie, voting member. Next to me is Shelley Nazer, voting member. Myself is Michael Fortune, the chair. We have our newest member, alternate member, Julie Martin. Julie Martin was approved in everything at the city council, our last city council meeting. We welcome you to the planning commission and hope that you enjoy it and look forward to all that you bring to it. To her left is Bob Washburn, voting member, and also on the end, Joe Chambers, voting member. So with that, again, I welcome everyone here, and we have no one absent, so we're all good. And I will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I invite you all to rise with us and participate. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all very much. We're going to focus on the approval of our minutes. And so if you guys want to bring that up, I need just a minute to get these things up on the system for me.
I only found one item I talked to Tyler about. It's just a word swap back and forth. Line 80, if anybody's interested.
On line 80,
Yeah.
you're a little ahead of me. If you can give me a minute.
Thought you wanted us to go ahead and.
Well, no, you go right ahead.
Oh, that's all I found.
Apologize, I'm trying to get my latest agenda. There we go. So you had one item on line 80. You've already addressed that with Tyler and everything. Yeah. So we knew he was close to perfect, so I guess one thing off is, so he's right on track there. All right, anybody, anything else that they may have seen? Well, if everybody feels that they look good and represent what we had in our meeting, and then I would entertain a motion in regards to the minutes.
I'll make a motion that we accept the minutes with the one correction.
I have a motion by Bob Washburn
I'll second.
and a second by Shelley Nazer. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you very much. We will move on to Tyler, do we want to take care of that business now? We have 2 items of commission business we're going to take care of before we review any public comments and so forth. So Tyler, I will turn it over to you.
We're just going to be swearing Julie Martin. Julie, if you'll stand and raise your right arm. Julie, do you solemnly swear that you will support, obey, and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of this state, and that you will discharge the duties of your office with fidelity?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. You may not have mentioned the part about snacks.
Is that mine? Oh, I already filled that one.
That's all right. That's okay. Thank you very much, and we welcome you as we mentioned. And and so forth. Our second item of business that we'd like to take care of at this time is with Brian Marble moving on and completing his term and assisting with us. I greatly appreciate that, and we had our farewell for him at our last meeting. We have a vacancy for the vice chair. And so at this time, I would like to entertain someone, if anyone is interested in filling that position, that would like to serve in that capacity. If you would like to nominate either yourself or someone on the commission, they need to be a voting member. They must be able to vote at every meeting if they participate. So, but I would entertain nominations at this time.
I'll make a nomination
All
for
right,
Shelley Nazer to be the vice chair.
was that so you wouldn't get nominated?
Don't worry about it.
Thank you very much.
Chair tonight.
You what?
I took his chair
Took his
tonight.
chair.
She's
All
sitting
right.
next to you, so that's what.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. We have a nomination of Shelley Nazer. Do we have any other nominations that we'd like to make at this time?
I'd like to nominate Bob Washburn.
Okay. We have two nominations, one for Shelley Nazer, one for Bob Washburn. At this time, what we will do, we need to be transparent in our voting and so forth. And so we'll do it one at a time. And so I will present the name first of Shelley Nazer. All those who would support Shelley Nazer and vote for her for the capacity of filling the vacancy of the vice chair, please say aye.
Aye.
Oh, vote aye.
Two ayes. Okay. I have, and I can vote myself at this time. Yes. I myself vote aye for Shelley Nazer. So with that is the majority of the commission for that voting members. So Shelley, we can accept that nomination and accept that.
I will accept. Yes, thank you.
Super. Thank you very much. And Bob Washburn, I appreciate it. I think both of you have done a great job. You've done a great job on the commission. I look forward to you continuing that and assisting with us in everything. So both of you are outstanding. Either one of you could have fulfilled all those capacities and even as the chair. So, which will come up here fairly soon anyway. So, but thank you.
Yeah,
everybody.
Bob.
Okay, with that being done. I don't know that there's any other official action that needs to take place in regards to that at this time. If there is, we'll come back to it, but let's move on. I wanted to address the issue of public comments. We have a couple people in the audience. The public comment portion is for the public to have an opportunity to speak to the planning commission on any general topics. If you're here for something specific in regards to an agenda item, then I'd ask that you wait for that item to come up. But if anyone has a comment that they'd like to make, Bob, would you mind getting the list just to see if there was anyone that signed up? And then Tyler, do we have anyone that's emailed, called in, text?
No, I just checked before I came in, no.
Okay, no online info. Thank you very much. Okay. All right, we have two individuals that have requested to speak. Kent, did you want to speak on your agenda item? So not now in as capacity, okay. Kendall,
Yeah, agenda item.
an agenda item, okay, all right, we will go about it that way. And hold on for those things. So with that, I would I will close the public comment portion of the meeting. And we will move on. We have no public hearing at this time. Oh, wait a minute. I got the right. Oh. We have no public hearings at this time. We also have no legislative action items at this time, and we have no administrative action items at this time. We do have two study items that we're gonna look at this evening. And so our first item, number 2, is the Champion LLC partial rezone request. The Planning Commission will review and discuss an application for a partial rezone of a parcel located in the general area of 595 West, 300 South. Applicants seek to rezone a portion of the parcel 03002 0007 from commercial highway to mixed use, MXD. And we have a rezone analysis that's been provided for us. And I would turn the time to Scarlett to give us an overview.
This piece of property is it doesn't have an assigned address at this point in time. It's in the general area of 595 West, 300 South. The parcel is actually larger than the 2.5 acres, but they are seeking just to rezone the north portion. This area is east of Judge's Car Wash and west of Fox Hollow Townhome. So right in that area there. The property is currently zoned commercial highway district. They are requesting mixed use district. Our mixed use district provides for no one use to be more than 50%, but it does require residential use. Then you can have a mix of retail, office, general business type things, to make up the other, but it all has to mesh together so that no one uses more than 50%. They can get, the mixed use zone to encourage space for, the businesses and to also encourage walkability throughout that area. It does allow them to have it's our highest residential density. I kind of hesitate to use the term highest because in many areas, this is not a very high residential density, but this one would be 25 units per net acre. And that is if they designed it so that we call it horizontal, where the businesses are scattered throughout, and then the residential community is scattered throughout. They're in the same complex, but they're not in the same building. Then we also allow for vertical, and that gets them a bit of a density bump. They can have up to 33 units per net acre. The vertical means that the businesses and the residential components are in the same structure. They're not separated, they're in the same structure. When Providence City talks net acreage, it means they have to take out infrastructure, public infrastructure, things like that. And then what's left over, then we can determine that acreage for the density amount. They would also have to take out, if there were any areas, I don't believe there might be. In fact, I think there is some natural spring or natural waterways on this property, on the very south end of it. If I looked at the map correctly, the setback from that would have to be taken out, subtracted from the overall acreage. It can't be counted as acreage for density either. So they don't have 2.5 acres that they could, use for the density count. I don't know what it would be, but it's
Right.
not the 2.5. In the staff report, there is a chart in the back of the staff report that compares the different uses between commercial highway and mixed. The mixed use definitely allows more uses because the commercial highway is based on sales, generating sales tax. And so, 88% of the businesses should, 88% of the square footage of the businesses should be sales tax oriented. So only 12%, where in the mixed use district, you'll see that just about everything that's in the retail district can be done in the mixed use district. And then, of course, the residential component is added, and so is the non-sales tax producing businesses added. The area regulations, the mixed use is not listed in the chart for the area regulations. It's within its own ordinance that we work with them on that so that they can design that interior. So like I said, it's a walkable, true mixed use looking type development and community. Some things to talk about as far as the general plan goes. Our general plan is a guideline. We like to stay close to it because we develop our master plans based on the guidance that the general plan provides. Our general plan vision is to guide and manage growth in a way that preserves natural scenery while also providing more opportunities to live, work, shop, and recreate in Providence. We have some initiatives, key initiatives. We have 6. A sense of place. We want to preserve the sense of place by identifying characteristics that define Providence as a unique place. A green infrastructure, making decisions regarding stormwater and exterior water use. That should say use instead of us, goodness. Guided by green infrastructure and low impact development, best management practices. Each one of these have objectives, but I'm not gonna read all of the objectives. You can look at them on the staff report. We also want to consider fiscal responsibility. Keeping in mind life cycle costs when making decisions for design standards such as road widths and new capital improvement projects. Our city is interested in being a multimodal city. Ryan can tell you how much we were fortunate, got a grant, and how many bicycle,
Almost 14 bicycle miles.
yeah, that we've identified and striped and marked throughout the city. And so we're working towards that objective. We want to ensure that transportation and recreation facilities accommodate a variety of transportation modes, biking, walking, driving, to provide people multimodal transportation options as a lifestyle and recreation choice. We also, economic development is important to us. We want to consider the long-term economic development impacts when making land use, transportation, and other planning decisions. And then number 6 is various housing opportunities. Encourage housing options to meet the needs of residents of all ages, income level, and family size, regardless of their state of, regardless of their stage of life. One of the things in the general plan that I feel like we need to call out and pay a lot of attention to is our Providence City's General Plan 2020 moderate income housing. State code requires a general plan to include a moderate income housing plan. The state code lists, I've got to update my report because in the recent legislative session, I think they added 5 new strategies. Maybe, I think that's what it is. I think they're up to 29. I don't remember for sure, but anyway, to make, so that there's no misunderstanding, we have to pick and word our strategies straight from the Richmond State Code. We cannot take their strategy and wordsmith it to make it more palatable. To us, we have to use it as per state code. We were in the group that had to, do this report right from the get-go. So we have been in the moderate income housing reporting business for many years. However, the last 4, they've really, increased the demands for that particular objective. The complete copy of our objectives and strategies can be found on our website. And if you had a link, you can link to it. And if you're looking at this online, you can link to it. Planning the overall goal for the chapter is to plan housing for all people, regardless of income level, while maintaining the aesthetic qualities and public service levels Providence City residents currently enjoy. Improve access to housing opportunities for low and moderate income residents, improve fair housing practices, encourage and support the provision of affordable housing units. And then again, we have objectives and strategies. I'm just going to read the objectives. We are required to have 3. If we want to be eligible for certain grants and state funding, we have to do 5. We chose to do 6 because we felt like needed some flexibility in our report. And so our strategies are as follows. Modify existing regulatory measures to encourage the development of affordable housing. That's our objective. I am going to actually read the strategies because these are coming right out of the state code. Rezone for densities necessary to facilitate the production of moderate income housing. Our next objective is to improve pedestrian safety, walkability, accessibility on streets, right-of-ways, and easements. The strategy that we chose from the state code is to demonstrate investment in the rehabilitation or expansion of infrastructure that facilitates the construction of moderate income housing. Our objective 3 is to support and utilize existing affordable housing resources. Our strategy is to demonstrate investment in the rehabilitation of existing uninhabitable housing stock into moderate income housing. Objective number 4, adopt new regulatory measures to encourage the development of affordable housing. Our strategy is to create or allow for and reduce regulations related to multifamily residential dwellings compatible in scale and form with detached single-family residential dwellings and located in walkable communities within the residential mixed-use zones. Number 5 is to consider the provision of adaptive reuse, which is the process of taking an existing structure and updating it or adapting it for a new use or purpose, and mixed-use projects to stimulate affordable housing and economic development. This strategy from state code is to create or allow for and reduce regulations related to internal or detached accessory dwelling units in residential zones. Final objective. Oh, we have 2 strategies within that one because they both dealt with accessory dwelling units. Eliminate impact fees for any accessory dwelling unit that is not an internal accessory dwelling unit as defined in Utah Code 1098530. And then our final objective is to support and utilize affordable housing resources. And our strategy is to apply for or partner with an entity that applies for state or federal funds or tax incentives to promote the construction of moderate income housing, an entity that applies for programs offered by the Utah Housing Corporation within that agency's funding capacity, an entity that applies for affordable housing programs administered by the Department of Workforce Services, an entity that applies for affordable housing programs administered by the Association of Governments established by an interlocal agreement under Title 11, Chapter 13, Interlocal Cooperation Act, an entity that applies for services provided by Public Housing Authority to preserve and create moderate income housing. or any other entity that applies for programs or services that promote the construction or preservation of moderate income housing. The reason why this is important is because we have to report annually on our progress on each one of those strategies. And they're pretty fussy about what they want reported. They don't want lip service. They want actual documentation of how we are putting these into effect. And I know that I've heard the comment before that, well, why do we do this? So what? If we don't do it, we should be able to design our own city and do what we want within our city. Ryan, can you take just a second and tell them the penalty if we fail to achieve our goals in this reporting process?
Is it $500 per day, and we only get, if we fail to achieve, if we fail to achieve the objective and the report fails, then we only get a chance to possibly appeal the report. But if determined, then it is a 365 day penalty, and we can't come midterm or a month late and do it. It's very stringent on that. Is it 250 this one and 500 next one? So, I mean, when you calculate that, it's fairly substantial when we talk about, and this is true penalty. So this year, that's a $91,000 penalty. And next year it becomes a $182,000 penalty. And we would expect that penalty to continue to rise. And that money would be paid out of the general fund. So right out of your property taxes. So.
The other thing that it does is it makes us ineligible for some of the funding options that the state has. So
Which
while,
funding we have taken advantage of.
Yes.
We have part of Third South, the fix and the bike lane and that part along the White's property. And we had 100,000 from that project that would sacrifice that, and would sacrifice other grant opportunities and options. The state's pretty dang serious about what they're doing and the force at which they're going to do it. This will be the first year that the cash penalty is assessed, but it will continue to rise until they get what they want, and they're going to extract it from us. And they can, because they collect our sales tax and then pay it to us. So they'll just net it out of either sales tax or whatever taxes they pay to us. And a large majority of our revenue is collected and then remitted to us from the state.
and I don't want to bring that up as some type of a scare factor or intimidation factor or anything. I just want you to understand the playing field, the rules of the game that the state has laid out. We still need to look at our infrastructure as you consider zoning changes, what we can support and what works for us. But we will be held accountable at some point if we don't look at measures that help us achieve our 6 objectives in the moderate income housing plan. Whenever we do a legislative, well, even when we do administrative decisions in the planning commission, we look at findings of facts, conclusions, and conditions. And Utah code, we use the Utah code, we use Providence City Code, we use our general plan. And there's a little summary statement for each of those. We also use our master plans, which include parks, trails and recreation, transportation, our 40-year water right plan, our 2020 wastewater master plan, our 2019 stormwater master plan, and our 2022 culinary water system master plan. Through the 40-year water right plan, we are able to work with developers and require the developer provide the water right to meet the demands of the new development. And we have in code how they do that. Our wastewater plan and our culinary water system plan and, both of those, and our transportation plan and our parks and recreation plan. Those plans, we utilize the capital improvements listed in those plans to create the ones that are impact fee eligible, to create an impact facilities plan. And then we create impact fees from those so that people, as they're coming into their city, they pay their portion towards improving our city infrastructure in those areas. We also, in city code, look at our sensitive areas. We want to make sure that places are developed in areas that can actually support the development. And then I briefly touched on our use chart and our area regulations for the two zones. Our conclusion is that we have done a state code. We've divided the city up into zoning districts. The planning commission, should say will hold a public hearing prior to making a recommendation on this request to assign a zone designation. The city's zoning districts do include the CHD and the mixed district. And then, we have talked about our general plan vision and key initiatives. And one of the things in our general plan is we have this framework map. And keep in mind, these maps are not done to scale. So this is general eyeballing the area. But as you can see, the area that's proposed for this, that's should be marked 300 south. That is not really a 700 south. That is in what they call a mixed use node. You can see the dotted line that goes around there. A mixed use node is a small collection of retail and service uses focused on a corner or single block serving the immediate surrounding area, and mixture of uses in horizontal format. E.g. Uses adjacent to each other. So it's contemplating mixed use in this area. The master plan, the parks and trails master plan, the transportation plan, it talks about how each one of how the development will participate in those plans. If the development, not at the time of the rezone, but at the time of the development, they will be required to improve 300 south. Because we didn't finish it with curb gutters right there, did we? We just increased and put the striping in, right?
On the section that'll be developed for this? I think it's just I don't, because they still have the canal, the
Yeah.
ditch that needs to be completed and done there, so it's
Right.
not.
So they'll have some infrastructure improvements on 300 south. They will have to dedicate water percentages according to our 20-year water right plan, and we use the percentages that are accepted by the state. So we know that they are valid percentages. At the time that building permits come in, that's when they'll pay the impact fees to meet our wastewater master plan. We actually collect 2 impact fees based on that. One is for collection that we keep here in the city and use to develop our system. The other is for treatment. That is one that Logan City enacted. And since we contract with Logan City for wastewater treatment, we submit those payments to them quarterly. And then, the developer will be required to make stormwater improvements as the development plans come in. And then the culinary water system is the same as the impact fee that will be charged at the time of the building permits. The county GIS parcel survey does not confirm sensitive areas exist. It only lists areas that may require further analysis. The Cache County Parcel Zoning Viewer and the GIS Parcel Survey and the Division of Wildlife Resources say the area may have the following: non-developable jurisdictional wetlands as defined by the Army Corps, potentially developable areas which are steep slopes between 20 to 30%. For a distance of 50 feet or greater, measured perpendicular to the contour lines. Crucial wildlife habitat that is defined by the State Division of Wildlife Resources, and hazard water table, meaning that the water tables are within 12 feet of the natural grade. In this area, the county's maps project that they're more like within 4 feet of the natural grade. So the developer will have to be aware of that and make appropriate decisions when they design their actual development. Lands within the potentially sensitive area may be developed and built on, subject to the requirements of 10.5.2 and other applicable city, state, federal requirements, and may be considered for development density. Those in the non-developable areas I explained earlier cannot be disturbed or considered for density. And then of course the use chart and the area regulations. So the conditions are, the state code requires you to review the plans or the rezone request and make a recommendation to the city council. Prior to making the recommendation, the planning commission shall notice and hold a public hearing. And then we need to continue to meet all the applicable, the applicant shall meet all the applicable state, city, federal codes, rules, laws. An approval by the city of any application submitted or paperwork does not alleviate the owners and or their agents from their responsibility to understand and conform to local, state, and federal laws. Providence City's approval is not intended to and cannot be construed to allow any laws to be violated. I think it's important to note that you will be making recommendations. You will not be making an approval on this, but you will be making recommendations. The actual approval process comes at the legislative level on a zone change. So, questions?
Go back to the top of page 6, if you wouldn't mind. I don't understand what the abbreviation on MIN on that is. 5 MIN/10 MIN.
Where,
What number?
Minutes. It's like a walking.
5 minute, 10 minute.
yeah,
Mixed
5
use
minutes,
zone.
10
That's
minutes.
The walking distance, the circles.
It's, yes.
Yeah.
It's 5 to 10 minutes
10.
walking. This portion of the area is within a 5 to 10 minute mixed use node, which means it's within 5 to 10 minutes of the predominant residential area that it would serve.
With a small collection of retail
Mhm.
and service uses.
There are no paths or walkways currently, right?
Well, that's some of the
From that
stuff that they will,
standard.
that's some of the things that they will put in as the development design happens. There'll be sidewalk and bike trail along 300 South. The bike trail will be on the asphalt with as designed on 300 South, but then there'd be park strip and sidewalk. Depending on how they are developed within their 2.5 acres, there may be some joint walkways, cross easements, things like that. It just depends how the development will proceed. One thing that we did put into our mixed use development is the fact that they will have to put electronic vehicle charging stations. They can do that a couple of ways. If they have garages, then in the residential units, they can put electrical outlets in that, and they don't have to have standalone, but in the commercial part, they do have to have area for electronic vehicles or electric vehicle charging. And they also have to have, in both the residential and the commercial, they have to have bike parking areas and bicycle maintenance, little bicycle maintenance stations. As we work with them, we've introduced fiber into our city since our general plan was put into place. As we work with them on that, as their development comes in, they will open their trenches and we will go in and do our things and have them very connected within our city, just like the other utilities, so. But that will all happen at the development stage, not at the rezone stage.
What is the current zone of the property? I didn't see that.
Commercial highway.
Commercial highway.
Mhm.
I'm slow, but once I get there, I'm there permanently.
I've got a question on 7 of 11, the little map there. Is there a way to determine where the property is, that the property line ends there? Is it by the river, by the creek
It's,
stream?
I'm not sure which side of this stream that property actually ends on, but it's either gonna be on the north side of the river or the south side of the river or the stream, but they will have to deal with any, setback from a natural body and that type of waterway, so.
Okay, so these dotted lines outline three of the borders of the property, right?
Right.
Then there will be a border someplace near that stream,
Mhm.
okay?
Anybody, any other questions for Scarlett? At this time, at this point in time, talking about it? I know we also have Kent Dunkley here representing the developer or the owner, proposed owner. So we could invite him up, but I want to make sure we've had if there's any other questions for Scarlett, that we address those.
I have a couple quick questions on the EV requirements. It might not be pertinent to this time, but do you know how many stations are required per?
Yeah, I don't remember how many per units, and like I said, if they have garages, that changes the requirement. If they don't have garages, it's one per so many, but I don't remember what that is.
Specifically for the commercial space, I was wondering.
Yes, it's, the commercial space depends on the number of parking
Parking spots.
spots.
For required EV, okay. And then with the percentage where you said no more than 50% of each thing. What was the breakdown of that? You've got dwelling, commercial, green spaces included in that.
No, well, green space is included within the design element, but the square footage is based on the footprint, on the square footage of each individual unit. So you add all the units together and your commercial units and your retail units can't be more than 50%, or your commercial units can't be more than 50%, or your residential units can't be more than 50%.
And that's calculated versus both horizontally and vertically.
Yes.
Thank you.
Just for clarification, does it have to have all three?
No,
It can be two of the three,
this has to have residential, but it has to have something
something besides it,
besides
because only
residential.
50%.
Yeah,
Are there requirements for a certain amount of green space in that acreage?
in the development area, we don't exactly call it out as green space, but we do require area, for playground area and a percentage of landscaped area, open area. I'm hesitant to call it green space anymore because it might be natural water-wise space rather than truly grass and stuff, but yes, there's area provided through the design element of the mixed use and the multifamily housing codes that would look out for having some aesthetic quality to it.
Yeah, I would just concur with what Bob Washburn. Of just having a better idea of the boundary of where this rezone is going to be, specifically on the south lot. Just so we can have a more clear idea of where that's going.
Do we want to invite Kent to talk about that? Is that all right with everyone?
Yeah.
Well, I've got one question before Ken
Sure.
comes up. So the general plan well, let me back up. The current zoning is commercial highway. And the general plan, which is a process that citizens in this community came together on, were given the opportunity to participate in. That came out that it does not suggest a preferred scenario for this property. But it is contemplated that it is within the 5 to 10 minute walk of a mixed use.
There's two maps in the general plans. One of them's a future, annexation map. And that one, they stayed pretty consistent with the existing zones. They didn't go too far out on too many limbs. And honestly, at the time, that seemed like a good way to do it, because 3 years ago, there was a lot of influx, and whether, just how the commercial was going to build out, how the residential was going to build out was, too crystal ball, right at COVID time. And so, the general plan map is quite a conservative map based on current use. And which, like I said, was probably a really good idea at that time. However, when it looked at the scenario for the different nodes and whatnot, that's where they came in with the mixed use, the walking nodes for mixed use in that area, in our suggested framework map. So some of our suggested framework map and our actual zoning suggestion map are not as in harmony as we would like, but that leaves it to the planning commission and the council to be able to do what they think is best at the time the rezone actually comes up. So. And in all honesty, we've had mixed use on our books for probably 15 years. And we were ahead of our time, the development community, when we put our first ordinance on, they told us that, but we felt like it was something we wanted to try and encourage people to do, because we knew we had limited commercial space in this, we had limited geographic space in the city. And, but in the last 4 or 5 years, people have started looking at that zone now as a more viable zone. When people got really interested in it, we updated our code a couple of years ago to make some changes to hopefully make it a better, more viable opportunity for multiple uses, and to achieve the goal of having that good mix of commerce and residential all in a nice little area that provides different forms of transportation and walkable and whatnot. So, but in all honesty, mixed use wasn't a zone that many developers wanted to consider until this last couple of years.
Have you talked to North Logan and determined how the project that's right next to 200, like, I don't know, River Cap walkway or walkway or whatever?
The one that they have the storefronts right along there.
Yeah, it's on 200 East, I think, and Deloy Hanson's
Right.
project is to the west of it, and IFA is over on the corner, but I think it's what, 2,500, it's not 25, it's 2,200.
They were really optimistic when it went in, and I haven't really talked to them very much about it recently. Brian, have you, in your city manager meetings, have you had occasion to talk to Alan Moose or anyone about it much?
What happened?
So I honestly don't know how well it's going for them.
Thank you.
I can tell you that when Danny McFarland came in with his mixed use project on the west side of Gateway Drive there, right across from Providence Gateway Townhomes, or Providence Gateway, he had about twice as many townhomes designed to come into that. And because he met our previous ordinance where it was no one uses less than 20%. he, during that time, after we changed the new ordinance, he actually gave up living residential units because he felt like the demand for commercial in that kind of a situation would be a better development. So he changed, and now that's where the next building is, and I know they've got some plans for future buildings coming in, and he's finishing out his residential phase this year as well. So just based on his limited experience, it seems to be working. Our new plan seems to be working pretty well. So
Are the commercial, are they retail or are they?
next is
Businesses.
not their businesses. I'm not sure what they've got planned for the future, but right now they develop water meters.
Yeah.
So
Turned out it's a nice building. They did a nice development there. And brought some jobs and so forth, so a
and
nice place.
across the street from it is kind of a pseudo mixed use. It wasn't zone mixed use, it was zone multifamily medium. However, they did design those 7 units, I wanna say, or 8, that front Gateway Drive on the east side there in Providence Gateway North. They have the street front, and I know there's at least a hair salon in there. I know there's several businesses in
Yeah,
there
they
right
could be
now.
done.
And they seem to be, once people figure out how to get around the financing with those mixed use buildings, they seem to be a positive situation. So. In our limited experience.
Sounds good. Thank you, Scarlett. Any other comments or questions? Are we okay with that? Scarlett, thank you very much. Kent, we'd invite you to come on up and share with us your vision of what you're thinking of there. And then we'll shoot you some questions, I'm sure.
Okay, my name is Kent Dunkley and I'm representing the potential buyer for this piece, about 2.5 acres. The potential buyer is from Providence. He has a real interest in Providence. The plan is not put together yet. We don't know what all the parts and pieces are, but I do know that the property line goes from 300 south to the spring. And the spring will be left open. They have no plans to pipe it, to cover it. So it will be landscaped and open just as it is going east.
So it would be a part of the 2.5 acre piece or a part of whatever that is. So whether it's down the middle of the creek, property line, or on the south side of it.
Right, and we haven't had it surveyed yet. We had Michael Taylor with Civil Solutions draw. I've made a few notes tonight.
Sure.
But he came up with this and it's approximately 2.5 acres.
Okay.
And that approximate goes to the stream or
Right.
spring or whatever we want to call it.
Okay.
Okay, so that's the parcel that we're talking about. The potential buyer has 3 ideas. One of them is commercial. And I have an individual coming up on Friday to talk about commercial and I don't know, all of you have probably seen this map. Have you
I
not
don't
seen?
believe that
It should have been in the packets. Maybe
No.
it wasn't.
No,
Okay, I apologize for
that's
that.
it's okay.
It should have been, but 300 south would be up at the top. The spring is down here at the bottom. And so this print, and I'm really sorry about that.
I was curious. It seemed like on the agendas we got, we have a
When I-
doubling of the
Yeah,
stuff on our next item.
I
They got at the bottom, so maybe
I had to
something just
make a
got overlaid.
correction on the staff report and I
Yeah.
apologize. I think when I made that correction, the map must have, when I changed the one piece, it must have had a ripple effect that I didn't realize. So
Okay,
So that's great. And I don't know if, I've seen it.
can I let you see this?
yes, if you want to pass it around, I think that'd be real helpful, because the question everybody's gonna
I
ask
can't
is.
pass it around because I have my
All
notes.
right, all right.
But this is to scale. The individual that's coming up on Friday, this is to scale of a building that he has in South Jordan. I talked to him a couple of weeks,
he actually wanted to build a store where Judges is a couple of years ago, but they just weren't ready. So now he had us draw this. We said we're looking at buying this property. So again, Third South is up here. And he said, well, the store that we need to
I'm okay, I saw it.
follow is in South Jordan. And so we had Michael Taylor take a picture of that and draw this plan. You, Ryan?
Yeah.
You've seen it? Okay. And so he's coming on Friday to talk about it, and we basically said, we want you to be here. We'll develop around this plan. Now, we don't know for sure if he's going to come or not. He wants to be here. His words to me last week was, Kent, I really want to be on Highway 165. I don't want to take second best. But he's coming Friday to look at this. That's what we want mainly, is this company to come and open a business there that we will all enjoy. So that's our hope. The next choice so that's number one. We have to have commercial. We understand that the potential buyer is okay to have commercial, and he knows that that's got to be a main requirement here. His second purpose is he's a citizen of Providence. He has an accounting company in Logan. He wants to relocate his accounting company to Providence. So that's the next purpose that he's buying this for. And then the second is affordable house, or excuse me, the third is affordable housing. And those are his three goals, and whatever he needs to do to meet the criteria for those three goals. And in that zoning, that's what he plans to do. Whatever percentages the city says, and landscaping and everything else, that's his purpose. I mentioned that, so I don't have a lot to say because it sounds like this fits. Commercial, this isn't a bait and switch. This was drawn after talking to this individual, and he said, mimic South Jordan, that works for me, and so we did. And after we did that, sent him this plan, he said, I'm coming up. I'd like to meet with you.
Yes, we understand it's a concept. After we rezone it, you have the right to do whatever you want within the zone, so.
I appreciate that, but this is our goal right now. This is the purpose, and the owner can't buy the property and put his accounting business there. He would build a nice building, but we know there's got to be more than that, and he understands that. I think that's it.
On your drawing there,
Yes,
the south part below where you've got the commercial area, is that where the other commercial building is gonna be the accounting and then residential
yes.
as well?
It would be that we know that we don't have the first place commercial lot, because first place would be along the highway. And so we want to leave what we feel is the best commercial area next to 300 South available for commercial. And so the accounting building residents will be further south towards the spring.
Access to the south would be through the parking lot?
Yes, and again, I don't know that this meets all of the city criteria, but we just took a picture of what he had in South Jordan and put it on this to see that it does fit. So we may have to tweak some of those things, but this is what he asked us to, this is the new store that they're building now,
Okay.
the new
Thank you.
model.
Other questions for Ken? Anyone?
No, you've answered my question. Thank you.
Okay,
The, going to mixed use. If for some reason this individual it doesn't come through, falls through. So we've changed and if we change the code to what you're asking for. What would become the primary thing, or is it to maintain that the 50% piece be commercial? Is that the main
Yes.
objective?
yes, because it has
Because
to
it
Have to be.
Yeah. And then housing and then some retail or some office space after that. And what type of units are you looking at for the
The residential,
residential?
we don't know for sure. It could be townhouses. It could be something like we were talking about. Where is it? Right over here. And that Joe mentioned in North Logan on Second East.
Mhm,
It could be something like that with businesses down below and living space up above.
mhm.
We don't know yet. We just know that we need to meet a certain percentage to get the plan.
Okay, okay. And this would really come during the design phase. I'm just curious about access to it for the residential portion. But maybe that's not as big as concern. We had something with this over here where we have one
The
main,
nice thing with access is because it's a combined
Right.
development, they've got to provide access for the development and gotta show when they do a site plan, it will be for the entire property and they'll need to show access for that. Now, if we were looking at access to an adjacent property, of course, we have the Ballard Springs there.
right?
And so if we were looking for access to the property next to it, then that would be something to consider. And could require that of, okay, you've got to do access through your development, but also have connection to the next property owner. And that's oftentimes done with utilities and connections. You
Right,
say, hey, but they will have to plan their connection for each of their uses. That'll have to be shown through the process. So that doesn't have to be covered at this stage,
right.
but it will be covered at a stage.
And in that, just because of this 5-10 minute zone, that walking zone, basically. Is there some additional requirements to make sure that there's some pathways, not just for driving access in and out, but for walking? Like to get out, walk out to the front, we'd have the sidewalk there in the front. Is there a requirement that there be some kind of pathway?
Not a
Because it falls
pathway.
into that 5 to 10
Yeah,
zone.
no, but they will have to have,
Yeah.
sidewalk, they do have to provide for pedestrian traffic.
Right,
And that's the whole idea behind mixed use, is to make it walkable. And so they will have to provide, sidewalks and how they decide to do their paths and stuff through their businesses and back into their residential community. That will all take place in the design factor,
okay.
but they do have to,
They have to address that. That's
do
my
have to
biggest
address that.
concern. I look at the property next door, which it does. There's there's units in the back, but there's access for driving and accessing those, but there's also the sidewalks and so forth that bring them out to 300 South. And then from there, they could go down to the light, crossover, go into the Macy's area or Tractor Supply or the restaurants that are over there. So I was just curious because it falls into that would be something as well that gets addressed, but it doesn't have to be, like I said, something right now. That sounds interesting. So anything else you'd like to tell us or talk to us about, Ken?
I think that's basically it. There are
Okay.
three purposes. One is to meet the zone, the use of the zone. But the way of doing that is to provide commercial
Right?
and an office building for an accounting business. And affordable residential,
Yep.
if we can call that a term anymore
Yeah.
in today's world.
Well, that was gonna be one of my last questions. Affordability. When you look at that, more than likely, what were those units? I know it's maybe not hard to tell right now because you don't know what exactly you're gonna put there, but. That's always the question of what goes in for affordable housing to try to meet some of the state requirements. And,
Probably not single family dwellings.
yeah, it'll have to be high mixed use, family use. Okay. If nobody else has any other questions for Kent, thank you very much, Kent.
Okay,
Kendall, I would invite you, if you wanted to come up, I think this is what you wanted to comment about. Okay,
okay,
thank you very much. I'd invite you to come up, and again, if you just state your name and so forth.
Yeah.
That would be great.
Kendall Pace, I'm a resident of Providence. I think I got a pretty good idea what my questions were anyway, answered through all this. The only thing I'm concerned about is the MXD or the mixed use district. Last time I reviewed it about a year or so ago, there seemed to be a lot of holes in it. It wasn't that well written. I hope nobody in here wrote that code, but it just wasn't that.
We all did.
Did you? Well, it wasn't that well put together, at least in
I'm
my
joking.
opinion. Yeah, I'm not trying to insult anybody, but it needs to be looked at before we go forward and change the zone. That's my opinion. It needs to be looked at and revamped before we actually change that into, accept that as a change. We also, my concern is the future health of this city kind of depends on commercial district as well. So giving up that, it means we're giving up some revenue for the city. So that needs to be also studied, but it sounds like this has got to go to a public hearing before it goes forward anyway.
That's correct.
So, you know, I'll have time to look at the zone code again, review it and add my criticisms. I'll handle it as gracefully as I can.
Perfect.
So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would invite you to do one thing that would be helpful.
I will.
As you mentioned, as you studied the code, I know you had gotten involved and looked a lot at that, and you mentioned tonight, maybe there's some items of concern or something. I'd invite you to write those down and submit them to us so that we could review them.
That'd be my plan.
Because I know we do look at the codes and we look at things as we progress and so forth. So
Those
if there's some ideas and things, and
I will look at it. I was trying to get an idea of where that was gonna be located, lines were, and it sounds like it's squished between these
between the two
apartments
existing.
and the car
Yeah,
wash.
yeah.
So, and it's not connected to
Yeah,
the 165. And a little concerned about that intersection and the safety of it, but that's something to be studied, I think, and talked about later. But that seems to be like an intersection that's just happy to have accidents, so adding more
Yeah.
traffic through there could be a real issue.
well, and I'm glad that they got the light there. And
It's a
I
little
can
bit better.
speak from experience. I've had 2 bad accidents there.
Yeah, the intersection
that
further down
intersection.
seems to be worse.
Well, yeah, because there's no light there now.
Yeah.
It'll, you know, and then I think as it gets developed and the 500 south go all the way through, I think we'll relieve some of that congestion out of there as well. So, but anyway, thank you very much for your comments. I appreciate it. Okay. Those are who we had. You guys are okay. You came to just welcome Julie and I appreciate all of that.
Welcome.
We all want to have some fans. So
My
thank-
people didn't show up.
Thank you very much. Well, okay, if there is no other questions, then what I would like to do is that we can talk amongst ourselves of what our feelings are about this. And certainly the next step would be to hear from the public by having the public hearing and getting that scheduled. Tyler, what would be our time frame for that?
Well, looks like you guys could do it June 12th if everyone had no issues.
So we'd have plenty of times. So it would be our June 12th meeting. So. Anybody thoughts or comments or concerns?
I'm more inclined to listen to the public
Right,
before I try and express my concerns.
okay, I think that's a great idea.
I would like to review what he had to say about the mixed use code already
Yeah.
in place and
Okay.
analyze that.
Same thing over here.
Yeah, I'd like to hear what the public has to say. I see 2 things. One, it seems like a good plan. But 2, our last meeting, we denied the expansion of the 55 and older because we want to preserve the commercial space along there. But this is also kind of an isolated area because of the Little Ballard Creek. That's what it's called. I don't know. But so it's a little bit more unique that way. And it does provide business possibly on the 3rd south. So it looks like that's the goal, which is
Right.
good. I don't know that you'd have another business behind that much anyway, so I like the plan, but I'd be curious to hear what the public has to say.
Okay. I think it also would be good if maybe we could, I got a copy of it, of what Kent was showing us.
Yep, we'll put it in there.
If we could get that for the council, the commission members to be able to see and review. I know they've seen a shot of it now, but just to think more about it and that kind of stuff like that. I think that would be great. I think the consensus of the commission is that we move forward scheduling a public hearing.
I'd make a motion that we, set a public hearing.
Okay, I have a motion by Joe Chambers.
Second.
And a second by Bob Washburn. And so Tyler, if we could arrange that and get it scheduled for that meeting, I think that would be fantastic, okay?
You wanna vote?
All those in favor of
I-
what we just instructed Tyler to do? Thank you very much. Okay. That was just a test to see if you guys were paying attention to stuff, so I'm glad that worked well.
Well, one of us passed.
That's true. Okay, with that being said, we will move on to item number 3. PCC 132 and PCC 1061 use chart and definitions amendments. The planning commission will review and discuss a code review for PCC 132 definitions and PCC 1061 use chart code review. So we can move forward with that. And with that, Scarlett, if you're all right, we'll let you give us an overview.
So in this recent legislative session, they adopted Senate Bill 13, and it went into effect on May 1st. And this bill provides a home-based micro school and micro education entity with similar duties, requirements, waivers, and rights as private and charter schools. It also requires a home-based micro school and a micro education entity as a permitted use in all zoning districts within a municipality. So we just need to update our chart to be consistent with state code. We've made a lot of changes to things and we haven't tackled the use chart. And we talk about, when we tackle the use chart, we'll have to look at that. And so since the micro school is forcing us to bring the use chart forward, it's probably as good a time as any to look at all of the zones. We've never we had put zones, uses in the use chart for the life cycle residential district, which is currently in use. And so there are some things that needed to be added to it. Some of the uses are discussed in various places in city codes, such as parking garage, but not listed in the use chart. Some titles have been changed to reflect the changes or proposed changes in city code. The proposed amendment also adds definitions for some of the existing and proposed uses to help with clarification. Again, our findings of fact, because this will be a legislative decision. We look at state code. This is falling in land use as well. Talks about that the municipality can enact ordinances and resolutions and rules. But only a legislative body is authorized to weigh policy considerations and may enact a land use regulation. The planning commission reviews and makes recommendations. Planning commission holds the public hearing. And then our conclusions are that the city council may enact or amend a land use regulation. The legislative body for the Providence City is the city council. The planning commission reviews and makes the recommendations. The planning commission will hold a public hearing prior to making the recommendation to city council. And then our conditions are before making a recommendation to city council. I should say on the amendments to existing land use regulations, the planning commission will hold a public hearing. And then we will continue to meet all applicable state, federal codes, rules, laws. And I didn't put the whole thing in because we are the applicant, but we know we have to live by what we do. In the definitions, I put the whole definition chapter in there. for you to see what we've got. And from the time we started this until now, quite a few of these actually have turned black. Everything on page 1 is now black. You've approved those, or you've recommended approval of those and with, associated with various other ordinances, and they've gone through city council. Page 3, those definitions have to do with the use chart. Page 5, those definitions have to do with the use chart. I was gonna put sticky notes and then I felt like I was just tabbing almost every page, so I gave up on that idea. Page 14, page 15 has some changes associated with the use chart. Page 18, pages 20, page 21 gets to turn to black because that was approved recently, along with that one item on one line on page 22.
When you say approved, the city council adopted it.
Yes, they did. They adopted the ordinance. There's a line on page 26. There's a proposed change for page 28. And there's some proposed changes on page 30, 31, 32, 35, 41, and 42. And I know that actually added a lot of pages, but we have kind of piecemealed the definitions up to this point, and I felt like it was probably a good idea for you to see really what we've got in all of those definitions. And then the use chart, if you'll recall, the first time we were gonna talk about this a month or so ago, and the residential section did not come out in the form, in the table. And so I went back through and reconfigured it, got the residential section to finally print and stay where it was supposed to. So you can see that we have I titled it across the use chart, which should be red because that's new. I put an explanation, just a very brief explanation of how to read those names. And then I added residential 1 unit per lot, residential multiple units per lot. And then we've got mixed residential, commercial and recreation public. So we have several different categories for uses. The black, of course, is existing code. The red is proposed code. We do have LCR and we do have active LCR. And we don't have, we have it in the books, but we don't have an active planned district. It is actually a zone though that I can kind of understand why people have not gone for it, but I'm a little surprised that they haven't because it's very developer oriented. They work hand in hand with the planning commission to develop a zone. And it's kind of done by development agreement, which the state code allows now a little better than it did at one point in time. So that's what that plan developed. That's what the PD is. If you want more information on that, you can find that in Title 10, Chapter 4, where it talks about our various zones. You'll see one of the things that we have told people all along, but we want to make it really clear. We have a bed and breakfast residential / short-term rental. And then we have a bed and breakfast Inn. Bed and Breakfast Inn, we have an example of that with the Old Rock Church. Bed and breakfast, residential short-term rental. I think we have a plethora of those. We actually only have one that I know of that has come through the process to actually get their conditional use that they need to have to do it. You can see that we've added the home-based micro school, the micro education entity. Now there is an ordinance going to city council. It's not a land use ordinance, it's a business licensing ordinance. For micro or home-based micro schools and micro education entity. But I will preface it with the state code pretty much says you'll let them come. You'll regulate minimal. And so that we encourage to make sure that they're safe with access to their proposed places and things like that. A home-based micro school can have up to 20 students. A micro education entity can have up to 100 students. A micro education entity, just reading the state code, this is just Scarlett kind of thinking, is more of a actual business. They can go in commercial. If they do choose to go in commercial, they need to sign a waiver. If the commercial is an area that would have an adult business or could have an adult business located in it or alcohol, they need to sign a waiver that they know they're going into that it doesn't prevent that business from coming in the future. So that's kind of an interesting little thing they threw into the state code, but there will be some ordinances going to city council on those in the near future. We've had requests to talk about recreation facilities. I looked through other communities codes, Hiram particularly, Logan, they have some. So we've added that to the use chart.
Can I ask a question back on the micro education, 100 students in a private home?
No, the micro education entity is, that's why I said, the way the code reads, it looks to me like that's designed more for.
But we have it on here in the chart that you can do it.
That's because we have to allow them in all zones.
So the state is saying you can have 100 students in a home.
If the home was big enough, there is a square footage requirement.
Okay, that's what I wonder if there's gotta be some other regulation.
Yeah,
Okay.
the state calls out square footage requirements per student.
And what about parking? I mean, is there an age? High school kids all drive. Been there,
Yeah,
done that. I've seen that.
we tried our best to meet, well, the council hasn't looked at it yet, but when I put it together, I tried, and I didn't have any examples to go on, because nobody had this. In fact, I had one lady call me and she said, do you know anything about this? And I said, oh yeah, I'm actually working on that. She said, you're the first community I've called that knows what about that. I'm sure Logan did. She must have just talked to the wrong person there, because I'm sure they probably are working on it, but no, I don't. But yes, it's pretty
There's gotta
much,
be some regulation.
they want to make sure that home-based schools, they felt like apparently people feel like there is, it's too difficult to establish home-based schools right now. And so they got the state involved, and the state said, okay, we're gonna make some rules so that you will allow them everywhere, but we can do some things as far as parking and, the state does call out the square footage. It's interesting, the state talks about how they can get their curriculum and what can but it's pretty open in all honesty. I mean, I would be interested for you to look at that, code and.
Sounds like one of those new, codes they created that they're gonna go back next year and have to tweak it because
Probably. It's kind of wide open. Have you
Yeah.
studied it much, Joe?
No, I was just wondering if the square footage for the home-based schools is more or less than that for a state prison facility.
I have no idea, since I didn't look that up. Didn't even think about that.
Comparison.
No, I'm not making a
No,
comparison. I'm just wondering where they got the number.
Now I have a granddaughter that's what she feels like. I'm gonna digress. Call today. Ponder rant into buying her McDonald's for lunch because she conveniently forgot her lunch and she was starving at school and just had to get away for a minute. So she would definitely go along with your analogy.
I'm just joking, but I was wondering what the,
What they came up with.
I actually think they did use, I think when schools are designed, you'll have to tell me for sure. But it seems like when we worked with the CCID charter school, there was some square footage that revolved about the number of students and classroom facilities and things like that.
You know, I don't even remember that when we built Ridgeline. There may be, but I don't know, because,
There's gotta be some calculation for fire code and for
Yeah.
building code.
yeah.
There's
I
a
know,
lot of things.
But I
that
don't remember
regulate.
ever having that discussion, so I don't know what it is or.
I'm quite sure we did have it with the charter school, but we don't get to get involved in the county. Or like Logan City School District. You guys get to do your own thing pretty much when it comes to planning, just so long as you have access and fire and stuff. Yeah, schools get their own inspectors and things. That is one thing that we do get to do inspections. The building, they don't get to have like a state school gets to have their own inspectors. They may hire the county to be the inspector, but they get their own inspectors. We get to get involved a little bit more on that side than we do with more like a charter school than a county school. So, but anyway, and then, then we just, there are some things that I added to it because there's uses now that, new titles that are kind of, like on page 4, on item 4, where it says barber beauty shop. A lot of times they call them beauty spas now. I kind of tried to clarify our yard sales and our estate sales. We actually hadn't had too many requests for estate sales, but we actually have had a couple. And they've kind of gummed up the works when they're here, but we didn't have anything to regulate them. And we're not the only community. I went somewhere the other day, I can't remember where it was, and I thought, what in the world? And I was trying to snake through this neighborhood where usually you can drive quite nicely. And then I got to a place and they must have been having an estate sale because
Or a micro school with.
yeah, maybe. No, they definitely had the signs out and whatnot, but I thought, they don't have a rule either, apparently. And then I added I just changed the recreation entertainment, to kind of clarify them a little bit that there's amusement and commercial indoor and then amusement, commercial outdoor. Our recreation, our parks and stuff go under the public parks, and so this is designed more for when people, we had somebody come in a few years ago. Our little miniature golf course, we really never had anything that actually called that out in our zone, and yet it was a very successful little deal, and we had somebody come in that had a pinball arcade type thing for a while and whatnot, so and there is talk of that, more of that type of stuff, so we require parking garages in our multifamily, so I figured we probably should shoot them into the use chart as well to show that we encourage and want those in there. And then I just had to make a on page 6, the biggest thing is, we took out the bulk, the gasoline petroleum storage, not bulk, because we have it in another area and there's no point to have that twice. Then I had a spelling error on depository, so I fixed that particular one. Anyway, that's where we're at. So we got it.
Yeah, go ahead, I'm sorry. I didn't-
We have to add the 2 schools, but other than that, everything else is pretty much optional as to what you think. Like I said, I went through the use chart and I went through the definitions, tried to match them up so that, they're fairly consistent and, it's what you got.
Good work.
I don't know.
Well, and I realize now that if I could just change to one of these micro educational institutions, I've got 57 migrants in my basement right now, but I could bump that up to 100, I suppose. There's
I'm
no-
sorry, we'll have our code enforcement officer, she started Tuesday, we'll have her over to your house on Wednesday.
We'll have that square.
We'll have that solved in a
We'll
hurry.
have the laser measurer out for the laser
I have
day.
some parking spots for him.
They came by bus, so they don't, no vehicles, but, okay, all right.
So if I can make a request or suggestion, if we can do something to maybe make this a little more reader friendly, maybe some shading or some bold lines between the different uses. I think that could be kind of nice. It's a little bit of micro squares all over the page.
I can certainly do that. Just keep in mind, I can do that for the work copies. However, when it comes time, when it finally goes through the whole process and we get it approved and Ty puts it on the website, it goes in that website format. Ty and I don't have much control over how that's going to look, but for work papers, if that makes it easier, if you would like every other line kind of grade, I can go in and do
But we
that.
don't want you to get used to that, because you won't see it in the code, so if you get used to it now, there's a limitation of actually.
So there's no way to update it on the code for the citizens
do
to kind of be able to, I just heard some complaints, like
It's
it's
a
hard
hit
to find
and miss. I
things.
mean, I attached the ordinance to the code. You can click on the ordinance and bring it up how the PDF would see it. That's if they click on it versus just scrolling down, looking for the code based on, not just off Unicode's format.
So you can see the code or the ordinance.
So I
by
attach
clicking
it,
on
so they have to click on the PDF to pull up the actual document. But why would they pull it up when it's right there in front of them and they just scroll through when it's in the actual code? But it would be there.
There are times when certain people, mainly attorneys, want to make sure you've got it right. I personally trust you.
I think it's a lot better than the printed book codes that, when I started the tax commission, you had all printed book codes rather than be online. It was, you marked those up and you had to highlight on your own to read those.
I had a question. I didn't mean to cut you off. I apologize. In other sections of the code, like a construction, rule of construction provision, does it have anything in it that says any reference to the Utah code or to UCA means the code, the current Utah code in effect at the time the ordinance is adopted?
Yeah, we have links in a lot of the code to go back to the state code.
I don't know if we
Like-
have that
like-
actual disclaimer though.
Like go to page 14,
Okay,
for example. Take me a second to get there.
page 14.
In the definitions,
Yeah, so on line 523, enclosed mobile business, CUCA 1156-102. I don't know if it were me, I would put a definition in for under UCA or Utah code means the current provision of the Utah code at the time the ordinance is adopted, because the legislature has a way of changing these sections from renumbering. They passed a massive bill renumbering Title 75, which is the Utah probate code, into 78, 75, 75A, and 75C. And the probate and estate planning section and the tax sections of the Utah bar have indicated that whoever did it did not cross-reference, and they left gaps in it. And there'll be several bills to correct it in the future, but it's a morass right now. But I just see, when you look at UCA 1156-102, you mean what's in effect now.
Okay,
So coming down here as a U, putting in a definition so that it defines what that term is. That's right.
UCA or any reference to UCA means the current Utah code. And it's not UCA anymore, it's UC.
oh, okay,
They've done away with the A.
good to know, old habits.
I know.
You talk any code annotated, now you don't say the annotated.
Well, the old Michi code used to be annotated with cases. But now the new code doesn't have the cases. You can buy an annotated version, but the official state version is Utah code
Okay,
without the A. So just any reference to Utah UCA or UC means the current code in effect now. So you don't get someone saying, well, if they change the code section, it makes it meaningless in here.
okay. I can add that.
Well, just a suggestion. I'm not asking you to,
No, it's a good suggestion, so whatever we can do to clarify and help people understand.
Well, and that it's consistent. If we went and looked for that, the UCA, would we see something different than the UC or?
Probably we would since UCA is gone.
well, it still exists by other publishers. You can buy an
Yeah.
annotated version, but the state
This-
doesn't adopt that as the official
Right,
code
okay,
publisher.
good to know.
So I'd like to, thank you for putting in all of the code,
Oh, you're welcome.
rather than just the stuff that's changing. Before we send this to a hearing, are we going to, make all the red stuff in black that's been approved so that it's all
Yeah,
clean and we don't have line through that
yeah,
type of thing?
quite a bit of that just happened last week, so.
Yeah.
I've got most of it to tie now.
It's with the mayor, so when she signs it, which I don't never know when, I'll start working on updating those.
That's a massive job and I applaud you for doing it.
Well, to me, Ty's got the more massive, I mean. Getting Word gives me fits with formatting sometimes, but not near the fits that some of the coding on our website will give you. So kudos to Ty to get, and now he's got to deal with graphics and but he does a good job for us, so.
So I did take the opportunity to read through all of this, not just the red stuff. And there are some things that are mostly inconsequential. Some misspellings and some different things I can go over with you separately. But there are some items that were kind of duplicated that I think maybe need to be combined, and I can probably just talk to you about those too, if you think that would be a more appropriate venue to do that, but there is one item that I think that we should discuss as to whether or not we want to make a change before we have a hearing. And that has to do with the short-term rental definition.
What page are you on?
I'm not sure. Let me just find it here. I've got it all marked, but I can't scroll very fast here. Um,
41.
page 41. Um,
You said 41?
On page 5, there's the bed and breakfast that says also known as a short-term rental.
right,
And then if you get to page,
that's on page 5.
yeah, on page 5, and then the actual,
Okay, yeah, that's part of what my concern is. So we defined bed and breakfast, / short-term rental as being with owner occupation, the provision for short-term rental with owner occupation.
that might change.
And that, yeah, because I know that we've had citizens in here who have talked about, along Gateway, the townhomes and stuff that have been purchased and they're used for short-term rental, nobody living there. I mean, it's just, and I just happened to, my brother and sister-in-law are visiting up in Idaho, and they're renting one of those townhomes for a few days. And there's no owner occupied, it's just somebody has a townhome, they rent it to people for a few days or a week, and there's no provision for that outside of owner occupation, and I think it needs to be addressed specifically. If we're gonna say we don't want any of that, then we need to say it. If we think that that's okay, then it probably needs to be addressed as well. So and that's something I think that, because you gave us all of this, I want to just look and see, is there an opportunity to make anything better? But this is new. I think we need to maybe talk about or have a plan or something to kind of address that. Does that make any sense?
If you're asking if you can change other parts of the code, if you feel like you need to change other parts of the of the definitions that are in the black, yes, you can make recommendation to that, and we can put the recommendation in red so that it can go forward as part of the public hearing. The bed and breakfast residential short-term rental, that actually is in the council's hands right now, for the licensing requirements and stuff, so I'm not sure.
Is it a study item for them at this point? Are they gonna hold a hearing?
It was a study item for them when we ran out of time, and
I think they've moved it to a public
they moved
hearing.
it to a public hearing, but we haven't, it depends on the availability of time slot.
Right.
Whether it will be on the one in June, or it may be July before we can get to it.
Are they looking at having a certain amount of off-street parking or for that, or is that part of it? Do you remember?
It does discuss parking, yes.
Is it something that we should wait for them to?
Well,
I don't
They're
know,
gonna use it for-
maybe just,
with our
maybe
public
just
hearing.
no, because if they,
Yeah.
whatever they change.
Yeah.
We'll have that changed in it.
And whatever they change, yours will follow theirs. And,
Right.
and would modify, if they make a change,
If they
then that
make a
would-
change, it's gonna.
then that would
force the
reflect
change
or
over here.
force the change.
Right,
So I don't think you have to
okay,
wait on yours. So keep in mind, definitions, if there are definitions that are commonly acceptable, industry standard, they may or may not need to be in here.
Right.
Also remember your charges is really focused on land use specifically, so if you have land use ones, we'd ask that you spend more of your effort on the land use ones than everything.
well,
We're
it's
not
not
Webster.
short-term rental, not a land use.
No, I mean, it is, but
Okay.
if you're expanding, so it's kind of giving you
No, that's fine.
generic idea,
Yeah.
so,
That's fine. I'm also a citizen, so I'm gonna go to the hearing.
Of course, but when you go to a hearing, you should also realize that you are a planning commission member first. And you would be seen as that and should be able to represent the planning commission as when you're there, because you are definitely seen as that you are representing yourself, you ought to clarify that you're not representing the planning commission, if that's.
Okay.
Because
Yeah, that makes
When,
sense.
when you are the planning commission member or the chair, you should be representing the voice of the commission when you introduce
Okay.
yourself.
So, and that's kind of why I brought it up, because I'd like to get other people's opinions of that. And I did find it again on page 32, there's, we have in red, short-term rental, C, bed and breakfast residential. I think we need a separate thing for non-occupied.
A definition for it.
A definition for it, and then, you know, within the code,
Do you have a
They're probably-
proposed definition?
A short-term rentals is defined by state code.
does it say owner occupied?
No,
Okay,
that's a
Yes.
regulation we can put in,
that's the
but
one that I think we shouldn't put in. But that's, I mean, that's my opinion. And that's why I brought it up, is because our definition says that it has to be owner occupied.
Mhm.
And I know that there are a number of them in town that aren't.
I'm curious if that's something you want or don't want. I mean,
I-
you reference that, but is that ultimately, are you looking to
I don't think
allow
that-
more short-term rentals that are
Yes.
not owner occupied?
I would like to clarify that it's okay to have a non-owner occupied short-term rental.
Say it again.
Non-owner occupied short-term rental. Meaning I buy a townhome, I don't live there. I rent it out 2 or 3 days, a week at a time. To anybody that comes into town wants to go skiing or whatever.
And you want that allowed?
Yeah, I would like that rather than I have to live there. I mean,
Yeah, it's like, it's a rental property and you're just getting clarification,
Yeah.
the big thing now is for the short-term rentals.
you clarify it, you say you need a license, you need to.
And you want
Like
both
when
of your neighbors to have those?
Of course.
Okay, whatever's fair in one spot.
No, I-
to be-
yeah.
To be fair, because that's the thing, once you set a rule, it
Well-
is citywide, and so,
One other thing
just-
to keep in mind, most people gonna do short-term rentals are not going to buy expensive properties to do them.
Right,
So you're going to put them in direct competition with moderate income housing. Because investors are going to try and get the most bang for their buck. And so if you don't require some type of a residency commitment with that, then all of a sudden, all of these townhomes and stuff that are within the $300,000 to $500,000 range definitely will not even be rentals for people to live in. They will be short-term rentals. Not all of them, but many.
not all, but there'll be some, but the thing is, there are a number of those now.
That
They're not
doesn't mean that
enforced.
they're.
And
there's a
there is no,
you have addresses for those, we'll send our code enforcement officer.
I don't, but, we had a citizen in here talking about it. She lives over in that area. And, knows a number of her neighbors here.
You're gonna get me
Properties like
divorced because we have one right on Vaughn's Way.
Yeah, I know.
Hold that address
She lives there.
She lives
She
there.
lives there.
And that's the only thing that gives my wife any comfort is that strangers aren't just coming in 1 or 2 days a week and casing out the place and then gonna come and you know,
Well, if-
you could use that to case a place.
Of course, yeah, that's true. I would like to address it. If I'm the lonely voice, then that's fine.
Well, I would like to,
That's fair. I think.
to address a few
everybody should-
things with that. I
we
don't,
should Raise it for the whole community.
Yeah,
See what
I
they want.
agree. I think it needs to be addressed.
And I'm gonna vote against it because I know how my wife feels.
well, let me
You have a
ask
citizen,
about
but-
the requirements of the state to do the moderate income housing. Whether or not they are owner occupied or the rental, we still meet the requirements from the state because of the sell price. Whether it goes to an investor or a indwelling owner, correct?
If an investor buys a property and they rent it higher than what meets the moderate income level, then no, we can't count. We can say we zone for it, but we can't count it as a moderate, as a unit that falls within that
And if you
Price
count
level.
what the rent is for a daily rental versus what a monthly rental is for affordable housing, there's no way that that'll count.
No, yeah, okay.
There's no way that'll count.
There's one other point that I think Sandy City ran into this about 14 years ago with skis and the ski people coming into the community. And they didn't have an ordinance that prohibited it, and the courts ruled that unless you have an ordinance that prohibits it, it's allowed. So right now, the ordinance that we have is short-term rental refers to owner occupied.
Well, that's a proposed.
No,
That's currently,
that's what it
currently
is.
operating under that assumption, that definition would be owner occupied can utilize it.
It's before the city council.
Well,
no,
these are current.
the current one, if you look at it and you look at the use chart, they have to have the, it's occupied by the owner or individual responsible for operating the facility. So that black on line 176, it says it has to be occupied by the owner or the individual operating the facility. So you can't have somebody just coming and going. By occupied, they have to live there. They don't have to be there. So like if I wanted to short-term, like I know that there's some people that do this, they go on vacation, they put their house up for STR while they're on vacation, but then they come home and they live in that house. They don't, it's not a revolving door for
And it
STRs.
would be their residence for at least half the year. So
Yeah.
at that point, I think the requirement, I don't know where
Right.
it is, but you generally, the requirement is a day more than the 6 months, so it's more than half. The other thing to consider, we talk about this affordable housing. We talk about it as a crisis in the public. We've obviously heard that term from the legislature, from our own county, commission and executives. If you believe that, then short-term rentals multiply that problem. If you don't believe that there is a problem, because that's the choice, you can choose to believe that there's a problem, or you can choose to believe there's not a problem. If there's no problem, then short-term rentals shouldn't be an issue. If there is a problem, then short-term rentals definitely magnify the problem. Right? I mean, but you can believe whichever way you go, and I'm not here to tell you which way to believe. I'm just telling you that there is definitely a lot of talk on one side. And if you have short-term rentals that are not owner occupied, then you are definitely magnifying what they're saying is a problem.
Well, can't you have both? Can't you, there is an issue with affordability. I mean, a lot of young people can't afford a $300,000-$400,000 home to get started.
Okay.
But I can also have a home that as the property, if I own it, why can't I have that as a rental unit? Short-term, long-term, whatever. You know, I
Well, if
think,
it's long-term, it's different, because then another family
right,
that needs a house is living there, right?
Right.
So you've
Right.
achieved the housing stock. If it's temporary and housing, they already have a house somewhere else. So this is a house that is removed from the housing market as a primary resident housing market and moved off that role to have a primary residence.
so it's removed from that, but that's only because there's a market for it. There's whether they're coming for recreational, business, vacations, family events, whatever, there's a market for it. But, I think that I think what people are trying to do is get some place, somewhere where we got housing at a price that is required for affordable housing, that that for some people, that's a chance for them to get into something. And that has to be owner occupied. They have to be the owner there and they have to live in it to qualify for that program. I think that's the difference. That you see throughout the state of what they're trying to do is, you know, have some developers do a development, but have a portion of them where they're gonna sell at this price. But there's some deed restrictions where, the
There's
owner
certainly
occupied.
that is a possible option,
Right,
Right,
Right.
that's certainly a possible option. We haven't done that one.
Yeah,
But you could certainly do
Well, and-
that over something, over another option. I mean, you have options, right? That's the discussion, yeah.
yeah, I think you can't penalize like, and there's a development right over here down the street. We all know which one it is. And 75%, pretty much 75% of those units are rental units.
Now, are they short-term rental or
No, they're
long-term rental?
mostly long-term
And
rentals.
long-term rental
But they're-
are tied into affordable housing
Right.
because that works
Yeah.
for the primary residence.
Right,
It's
the majority of
short-term-
them are, Yeah.
The day rentals that don't count as a
Right.
primary residence.
there are some short-term in there. There are some that are verbose. I went through and met with almost all the people in there. And the problem is that because the majority of them were bought as investment rental units, when they were first being developed in the 200 to under $300,000 price range, investors bought groups of them, 4 of them, 6 of them, things like that, some 1 or 2. But the majority is long-term. The thing is that the demand for rentals was so high that the rental income was rate just kept going up. So that's why it was constantly turning over. Most people weren't there more than a year. Initially, it's stopped somewhat since then, but there are some,
Part of that though, Michael, you gotta remember supply and demand.
right?
And if you take a residential property and you turn it into a commercial property, then instead of the state needing, if you think that what they're telling us is true, instead of this state needing 32,000 more homes, they actually need more than that. Because you've taken what was a home and now you've turned it into a commercial venture. I know that renting long-term is a commercial venture, but in my mind, that's different because you're still providing a residential dwelling space.
Right,
Short-term rentals are nothing short of a single motel room.
That's right. It's your competition, the short-term rental is in competition with the hotels around.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, and if you can get a 3-bedroom townhouse, the same price as a hotel room, and you do that for a week, why not do that? So, but I mean, yeah, you're right. It takes that unit out of the housing market. But I think we need to address it as a separate item, not. Either way, I mean, I'm okay with saying they need to be owner occupied. But I think we need to have it addressed and say that it has to be that way, and then it would be enforceable. And
yeah, but I don't know that every owner, you take away the investment opportunity of people that have rental property. Why can't, if the demand is there for short term, why can't I benefit from that as a property owner?
Well, part of our job is the whole purpose of zoning ordinances are the community establishes this health, safety and welfare of the community and protects property values.
a sense of place.
And yeah, sense of community. And I have to tell you that if 2 or 3 of my neighbors turned their homes into short-term rentals, I would not be able to enjoy the community that I presently live in. I'd be wondering who was there. I'd add more security cameras to my house. I'd add a higher locks and up the security substantially. And that'd be all out of my pocket. That's, and that's an alternative to going out and buying 2 or 3 guns.
Well, and
Which I'd probably do anyway, but not for that purpose, just
yeah,
because I like guns.
yeah, I see your side as well. I see that point.
I mean, I
But,
do see that a lot of people see it as, sorry,
No, go right ahead.
I do see that a lot of people see that as a nuisance, but it also does bring revenue to the city with people coming to participate in recreation. And there is a big trend where people I don't prefer it, but people prefer that over a hotel. And that gives, visitors a more sense of quality of life. And they enjoy that going into a town and staying in quaint neighborhood of the town or having a more home feel when they're staying. And that draws them back to the town to be able to enjoy what amenities, you know, that are offered in that town. So that's another side to it, that it does add value in its own way to a community.
I have to go to Twin Falls for a baptism, grandson, June 28th, 29th. So I have hotel reservations right now, but I also checked out, what do you call it?
Airbnb.
And they had a nice, condominium that would accommodate three, well, myself, my wife, and three of our kids. That it was in an HOA down on the river, inside of a really nice community. And it was interesting to me that the HOA had anticipated it and indicated, and they put a disclaimer on it that you cannot use the pool or the tennis courts or the other facilities. Temporary residents are not allowed to use the amenities of the community. So kudos to whoever
Yeah.
did the HOA to anticipate that.
So when you do go, you could then leave yours to a Airbnb, and you can Airbnb yours while you're gone, and then it's a net benefit to you, because then you're getting paid and you happen to pay somebody else, you could.
You haven't been to my house. And
Well, you can see it's an interesting topic with some strong views, both sides, and I think it's a good thing to hear from the public on about that. Because there's thing, and there are, I believe over there are restrictions in their HOA that there is not supposed to be short-term rentals. And so I know it's going on. I talked to a couple of people, I don't know if it still is, that was probably 9 months to a year ago, but so it's enforcing that, and so,
Well, and if they don't enforce it, it's gone.
yeah,
That's
Yeah.
the law.
so.
I was
Shall I?
thinking one option that we could do, is a line 172 bed and breakfast residential. We do reference it in other places in the code, also known as a short-term rental. We could potentially add that to that line in parentheses, short-term rental or / short-term rental. Cause I'm not sure everybody calls them a bed and breakfast
They don't.
nowadays, yeah.
They call them short-term rentals,
Yeah,
so that's the standard name, but. I think one thing to think about.
Yeah, I agree.
When you start, looking at allowing commerce. There are a lot of people that would love to buy a home, one of the homes in downtown Providence and turn it into a dentist office or a salon or
The law office.
a law office. And to blur the line between having people coming and going on a short-term rental as a business. I think you need to think about the other businesses that can function really well
Right,
in a residential area like that. Maybe even more than a short-term rental, and yet we've been very careful to make sure those kind of businesses were all owner occupied. So I think.
it's a good point.
I think, I'm not saying that, I'm not saying one way or the other, I'm just saying, I know the arguments that I will get from future people that wanna buy a home in an area to convert it to an office rather than a home. And if we've got short-term rentals going on, that's kind of, they basically converted that into a small motel. So I
Right.
think you have to remember, it's more than just that isolated use that it will impact.
And if you are going to isolate the use, the next domino is to make sure they're paying transient room tax.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
And because that's the tax you get, because otherwise the recreational facilities are subsidized by the residents. And so to Joe's point, that's actually not a tax revenue or generating that. Let's say you have somebody come in, use a short-term rental, and they use the public facilities of maybe the tennis court or pickleball or whatever else. Which
Right.
reduces the use for the residents that are here
Yeah.
paying the property tax that actually pays for that.
I was mostly referring to shopping, paid like skiing. or something, you know, in the city where they would pay money to do
We
things.
don't have any of those
Not
items.
here, but you know, shopping. Not much of shopping here either, but.
Car washing.
Yes. So this is an item that are we wanting to have it go before for public hearing?
It's ready for a public hearing. I think we need one more review of it, with the suggestions that have been made. But I take Scarlett's recommendation on that. Yeah. I would like to look at it. I think Bob would like to look at it with
Yeah.
the corrections made. I'm a little bit OCD. I actually think you should add a definition for zoning map. I know you've got it in zoning and you're referring it. But almost every code I've looked at, I've seen the definition of zoning map added as, so it's very clear what the zoning map is.
Yeah, if you make a list of those and submit it to Scarlett, any of the changes you have and submit them before so we can have. Keep in mind, we need those submitted a week prior to the meeting so that we can incorporate those. Because we try to get out the agenda a week in advance, so we need those comments. But a lot of that, would love to be able to take those comments. And hopefully we get these out to you in time that you can review those and have those prepared so we can take those and have that corrected and modified for the
Yeah.
next one. So my understanding, you're looking to move it as a study item to the next
Next meeting,
is that?
We can get it kind of cleaned up color wise and.
so that give everybody,
Are you in any hurry to comply with the code on those one definitions?
The micro,
Yeah, the micros.
no, I mean, it's already in place. So when somebody comes in, we have to allow it. It's just the city's a little bit at a disadvantage because if there's a few things that we would like to tweak. If somebody comes in and they come in under our current law, which doesn't have those tweaks, then they get to stay that way. When we finally get them in place, we don't get to go retroactive and say, hey, now we've changed this, you gotta do this. But, I do know there's at least 3 people that are very excited about having a home-based micro school. I don't know about a micro education facility. I haven't had anybody
Crazy enough to do that.
ask me about that specifically. But I do know I've had 3 different people call and ask about the home-based micro school, which I can see why they'd like to do that. So. But no, there's no, because it's already in state code, so we have to let them do it. So there's no. And we're not out of line not having it in the code, it's just we don't have any regulation on the options that they give us.
so within, it sounds like what the consensus is that let each of us go through it. Again, any suggestions or ideas that we have, we can put those together, submit them to Scarlett.
Yeah, but I'm gonna be a little fussier than Ryan.
Yeah,
You need to get those suggestions to me about 10 days before the meeting, so I can have a couple of days to get them ready to get to Ty, to get them in the packet.
sure.
Can I give you just one right now? We're talking about the micro schools and the micro education units. And they are not listed in the definitions. I think it might be good to call those out and what the difference is and what they each mean.
Oh, I thought I put them in the definitions, sorry.
I didn't see it in there.
I put them in the
I've got it in the background information. And I've got it in the use chart,
Oh,
but I think that's the only place.
maybe
So, it sounds like you've thought about it though.
I did think about it.
Good.
I will go back, you're right, I'll go back and put them in there.
Okay. So with that, everybody take a look at them, some study work over the Memorial Weekend. And,
And have them back to Scarlett by the 31st.
Yeah.
That's her tickets.
yeah, that sound all right for everyone?
Yeah.
Sound good?
Great, thank you.
Okay. Okay. Do we have any other business that needs to come before the commission? If not, I will entertain a motion that we close our meeting.
think Julie gets to make that motion.
That's right.
I'll make the motion. Set me right in there. I'll make the motion to conclude the meeting.
I have a first motion by Julie Martin. I need a second.
Second.
Second by Bob Washburn. All in favor?
I
Thank you very much.